always.
Okay, well,
There's no,
look who we are. Here is Richard Taylor and Ronnie Courtens. We're Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live, and we will be back in a few minutes. I have to do some maintenance real quick, and we'll be back with you. We're going to talk about the state of Final Cut Pro 10 in 2019, primarily overseas, since Ronnie's, that's where he works. I'm curious as to what's going on over there. So we will be right back. Here we are. Look at this. I actually got Ronny Courtens, who has been very busy post-NAB.
Yeah.
So you survived NAB, huh?
Hardly.
Barely?
Barely, yeah. It was busy. NAB was really good, but our team, the LumaForge team, was working on 3 different stages at the same time. So we had a suite where we did demos for resellers, clients, presentations we did. And then we had a presence at the Frame.io booth
Right.
with a couple of people.
Right.
And then, of course, there was the Faster Together stage. That took a lot of time, a lot of preparation, but which turned out to be a really good event. So yeah, the whole team was really tired, but I think tired in a very happy way.
Did you, compared to last year, was it more work than last year when you had in 2018, because LumaForge did the 3 days, 8 hours each day in 2018. This year was a much bigger event, much bigger, but it was just the 1 day. So which would you say was more work from your end?
I wasn't really involved with the preparations for
Okay.
the USA team, but from what I saw, it was much more intense. Because when we had that spot on the floor or just besides the floor where you were, it was a bit looser.
Okay.
This was what I would call a major event for a lot of people, with some very high-profile speakers as well. So yeah, there was much at stake. And, we actually remodeled the Super Meet.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility.
That's
because
giant.
It has always been an icon at NAB and at IBC. So yeah, it was a big responsibility. I think Christian and the team, they did very well. We had lots of feedback from the event. I think people were very happy that we got that. I actually saw Michael Horton, and he was happy again. He was enthusiastic. He was, I felt the old atmosphere of the Super Meet again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was there, I've been for the last couple of Super Meets, and this one seemed, even though it wasn't a Super Meet, it just seemed like a step up.
I think so. It's the ambience and the atmosphere of the Super Meet, and then with a little more high-profile speakers and an event that is not necessarily around new products.
Right. And do you think everybody was satisfied in the LumaForge team as far as the results? And Michael Horton, do you think everybody was satisfied?
Yeah, I've talked with Michael. He was very satisfied. And the team, well, what we said, I talked with Sam a couple of weeks ago, and he said, yeah, it was fantastic. I don't know if I want to do this again.
Well, there you go.
It's been very heavy on the team, but now we have the experience and all I'm talking about the LumaForge team, but there was also different other people running around with cameras, editing overnight.
Sure.
A big hat off to everyone who has contributed to that event, because it was not really easy, but they managed.
So it sounds like maybe it was more work than last year.
It was more intense.
More intense.
Much more intense, much more, into 1 day, and it's an all or nothing thing.
Right. But even the exhibitors area was, you guys did LumaForge did a fantastic job with that. It was, Super Meet was always fun. This was a step up, maybe 1 or 2 steps up from last year. It was just more elegant. It was nicer. You had seating arrangements with like coffee tables there. When I went out during the break between the 2 presentations, it was packed. It was packed with people out there.
I know. I actually didn't see the presentations, or at least maybe a couple of minutes of each of them because I was busy talking with people in the other area. That's our job, talk with resellers, talk with clients. And but now I've seen the videos. I think it was really well.
Right.
Certainly something I would like to do again, but I don't know about the rest of the team. But now we have the experience, so probably, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been to IBC, which is kind of like the NAB of Europe. But does anybody do anything like? I mean, I know the super meets there. Did they have a super meet there typically? Did they have any in the past?
There was a super meet every year until I think 2 years ago.
Okay. So
then it became very difficult for Michael to find the right spot. And,
right.
Prices are incredible for venues like that.
Right.
And to get all the financing together and also the organization. And, in the US, we have 15, 18 people of Lumoforge. The whole team flew over to Las Vegas. In Amsterdam, I'm alone. And Sam comes with me.
Right.
And then we try to do things. So maybe your question would be, will there be something similar at IBC? We don't know yet.
Okay.
We are talking about it. I would love to do it. And I think that decision will be made early June.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That in itself is, I mean, I've been to Europe plenty of times, but never been to the IBC. I've gone for other things, usually music. London and Paris I've been to multiple times, so
yeah.
I really enjoyed that. So you had a little bit of jet lag after NAB. I'm sure everybody did. I mean, I wasn't involved intimately with that. I was just there filming doing lots of filming, and I was dead tired. I mean, my feet were hurting when I got home, and it just took like days to recuperate. I can't imagine what you guys went through. The Lumoforge team.
It was the worst jet lag. Oh, the whole team. I know Sam, and I spoke a couple of days later. He said, I slept through the weekend.
Wow.
I just slept through the weekend.
Wow.
And I had been flying over from Europe to Los Angeles. I stayed with the team for, I think, 4 to 5 days. So I was already a little bit into the American time. But then we went to really hard work and the parties.
Right.
We were up until 2 or 3 in the morning. Sam and I shared a room, and actually we never saw each other.
Wow.
So you came in, just slept, boom, and in the morning I was up, and Sam came a little later, depending on who came in latest. And actually, yeah, when NAB was over, I thought, okay, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to LA for 1 day just to recover a little bit, and then I'll take the 11-hour flight to Amsterdam.
Sure.
So I arrived in Amsterdam on a Saturday morning, and my car was there, so I could drive another 3 hours to where I live, but I couldn't move my feet anymore. Actually, I was so I don't know what it was. It was very intense at NAB, and then the long flight, and maybe that was a reaction I had. So I just stumbled to the nearest hotel, the Hilton at the airport, and I stayed there for 48 hours sleeping.
Wow.
And eating. And then I took the car back home.
Yeah.
So actually, I was arrived on Saturday. I arrived on Monday morning instead.
So,
But, yeah.
are you all rested up, ready for 2019 now?
Absolutely. Last week I was in Finland. I had the pleasure of meeting Benjamin Mercer and Jari again. Jari, whom I've seen at NAB.
I saw him too. Yep.
Yeah, we had a presentation with our new reseller there. Very professional, very great team. I love them very much. And it was good. We had actually 14 high-profile clients coming in, of which a couple of them have already led to actual leads. So yeah, that's also actually my job now is to build out our reseller network in Europe and beyond. And that is finding the right resellers that really fit into our mentality, which is, the human approach.
Absolutely.
Not really the technical or the figures, but the human approach. If we like their mentality, if they put the customer first and not the technology, then we can agree on a resellership.
Right.
I think the customer satisfaction is top of line at LumaForge, and our resellers should have the same mentality. That's the thing that I do now, picking them out, then giving them support, doing a presentation for some of their clients, and then they start working. And I think that's more important. I've been involved, we're a young company, a fast-growing company, so everyone has to be able to do anything at a given time.
Right.
At NAB, we all were event planners, event organizers.
Right.
So, and I think we're a very, very flexible company with a really great team of people who are not afraid to put their hands to the job.
Right.
Yeah, but even if it's not really, I saw our financial manager driving the truck to Las Vegas with all the gear. So
right. You have to do a little bit of everything.
Yes. So I've been handling some sales until now, but that's going to change. We now have a really great sales team, Lauren and JJ. I've worked with them for the first time at NAB. That was a really good experience. So I'm very confident now that we have a perfect team to follow up on things. And they're good at the things that I'm not that good at. I'm good at presenting, at promoting, at finding good dealerships. They are really good at following up, at contacting the clients.
Right.
And because I have millions of things to do, I think it's very good to have people like that in the United States who can follow up.
Right.
And it was a really great experience working with them.
That's excellent. So one of the things we hear all the time when it comes to Final Cut Pro, the United States, the way the United States looks at Final Cut Pro versus the way that Europe and other overseas countries look at Final Cut Pro. So, are you involved with setting up some of these places when you do the sale for Final Cut Pro? I mean, some of these places, like the high-profile places that use Final Cut Pro 10.
I used to be involved, before LumaForge, or even in the first years of LumaForge, I used to be involved in quite some big setups for Final Cut Pro 10.
Right.
Helping them out and, giving advice and, trying to find the right ways for their workflows.
Right.
Today, I am rather on the other side because people contact LumaForge, they want the system. Then I go over there, I talk with them, and I find out that they use Final Cut 10.
Right.
And it's crazy. I've discovered places that I never would think they would use Final Cut 10.
Like what?
And that's good. So what actually is the fact is that the early adopters of Final Cut 10 in Europe, like the big ones like Metronome, I'm going to say BBC, I'm going to say TF1,
right,
really big things,
right,
big guys, they still use it, and they're expanding their projects, their productions with Final Cut. So that's a good thing. Once people start using it, I don't think it's very easy to go back to anything else. That's my experience. I don't edit that much anymore, but it was my experience all the years that I have used Final Cut in the editing world. It's very, very hard to go back to anything else once you're used to that kind of flexibility, fluidity of the application. And I'm not talking about features.
Right.
Just talking about the overall user experience of Final Cut 10 is beyond anything you have with any other NLE.
Right.
Though I must say that I do respect all the efforts that Adobe does with Premiere, that Resolve is the Blackmagic is doing with Resolve. Even Avid had a little facelift.
Yeah, they
recently.
did. They did.
Yeah, they did, and it's good. It's good to see that they finally see that they need to do some catching up. Although it's not really required in the workflows that their core users have, because it's mostly offline, it's mostly narrative.
Okay.
But yeah, even Avid starts to not innovate but renovate. So that's good. That's good. And I think Final Cut 10 has led to many people thinking again about how editing should be and how an NLE should work. And I think it's a big sign of flattery that you see that many of the features of the capabilities of Final Cut Pro 10 are now being ported over to other NLEs. And it's obvious.
Resolve 16, I noticed some similarities in Resolve 16. So I was following Resolve 15 for the last year, since last year's NAB, and it just came out of beta a year later. So when you get involved with 16, I don't like touching beta software that much. I like at least go through a few iterations before I get involved, because I don't want to be wasting my time. So I was kind of waiting for 15, and it finally got out of beta, and then they did 16. Now that's going to be in beta for another year or whatever. But they certainly, I was at the Blackmagic presentation at NAB. It was certainly a very interesting crowd there, and I really like what they're doing as well. If I had to use a second NLE at this point, it would probably be Resolve if I needed a backup for me.
There was a time, and when I wrote on Creative Cow, and I think it was an answer to all of the repeaters, that I thought that in the end, Final Cut 10 and Avid would make great partners. I have revised this. I think there's a big chance that Final Cut 10 and Resolve will make excellent partners because they are different and they are very compatible. I think it's a given that they address a different kind of people, which is good, which is really good. Because if everyone targets the same market, then nobody wins.
Right.
I think with Final Cut 10, Apple has certainly reached the market that they intended to reach. And now it's good to see that Resolve might be interesting for the other side of the market.
So I have this discussion. Usually I don't get that involved with people that are, saying my NLE is better than your NLE. I don't get involved. It's just like children playing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I don't think that Final Cut Pro 10 was ever targeting Hollywood. That's always the biggest. People say, well, Hollywood uses Avid or Hollywood uses Premiere. I don't think that was ever the target of Apple. It doesn't seem like it.
Not at all. Just like classic Final Cut was never targeted at the professional market. It arrived there
right
by coincidence because it solved some kind of issues that at that time were imminent, like switching to HD and use Avid.
Right.
Had to buy completely new systems, which was horrible. So many people threw them out and switched to Final Cut, and that's what was the momentum of Final Cut. And I think Final Cut Pro 10 serves a really huge market. Was not really targeted to big narrative works or movies or large television series. Actually, it turned out that people started using it for those kind of projects, and we're very happy with it. Still very happy.
Right.
So it's the same story over and over again.
Right.
They try to do something for let's say the middle market, and they arrive at the top, and they're competitive there. I think Final Cut Pro 10 is doing really, really well at this time.
Well, so Apple announced 2.5 million users in 2018. Obviously now it's 2019, so I'm just going to presume it's over 3 million plus users. That's a lot of users. That's not, scraps. I mean,
no, and even when you say, okay, there's a lot of people, I don't think there are people who spend $300 on an application that they never open. That would be ridiculous, but okay, you have many different people in the world. But let's say that only 70% of the people who actually bought the application also use it. Well, then that's still a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is.
So,
absolutely. So let's see here. So we were talking before we came online. I'm going to bring this up here. This was an interesting blog from Oliver Peters that came up.
I've known Oliver for quite some time. We email together, And I've always respected Oliver very much because he is objective.
Right.
He tries to look at, he knows every NLE. He tries to look at it from his own point of view in an objective way, without being a fanboy for anything or being an apologist. He just looks at it. And though there were times where we didn't always agree, but I always respected the fact that he remained quite objective to the situation. And now, unexpectedly, he has posted this blog that for people who haven't done it already, it may be time to reconsider Final Cut 10. And knowing Oliver, I think he just did it because he realized this himself, that it was time to reconsider. He found good things in it because he's using Final Cut 10. He also uses Premiere primarily, but also uses Final Cut 10. And I think it's about his experience, his real-life experience he had with the application. And he sums up some very good items that could be useful for people who would reconsider Final Cut 10. I think it's a very good blog. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at digitalfilms.wordpress.com. A blog by Oliver Peters. I just put it up so people could see it.
Oh, good. Because it's worth reading. So, and I think he hit the nail right on the head when he said that it has come a long way, and it now also is really. I don't think there's there's not any reasonable man or woman who can say that Final Cut Pro 10 is not professional or whatever was said. I think it's one of the 4 major NLEs with its own targets.
Absolutely.
And an extremely large user base, and one of the biggest and greatest communities of them all.
Yes. I consistently say that the Final Cut Pro 10 community is, to me, the friendliest community out there. Mm-hmm. From what I've seen, and I'm on Twitter watching different keywords: Avid, Premiere, Resolve, but I think the Final Cut Pro community, it just seems more helpful and more friendly for the most part. There's a few grumps in there once in a while.
There always are a few grumps, and you'll see that now. There's been quite a long time between major updates, and it may take another, some more time if they are really preparing 10.5.
Right.
Which should be a update. Then it may take another while, and you will see people coming up in groups and in blogs saying, "What is happening? Everybody is updating, and Final Cut hasn't been updated." Same story over and over again. You remember before 10.1 came out, it was the same long period.
Yes.
And people were really unhappy and shouting. That's the time where you need to be very careful about what you say about Apple.
Right.
Because when they don't say anything, they're preparing something.
Yes. Anytime there's a quiet period, I agree. So I remember 10.0 had 9 updates. It went up to 10.0.9 before it hit 10.1. Mm-hmm. That was a lot. Even though it wasn't the full number update, it was a lot of updates that came out. So
that's also what you see now with Resolve, because they are trying to to get that NLE ready, which it isn't right yet, but it requires lots of updates. To add features, to correct things, to solve bugs. That's what we saw just after Final Cut 10 was launched. When Premiere was getting that revamp, there were hundreds of updates. Everybody was talking about all the updates. And then, all of a sudden, things slowed down. I don't think that releasing a lot of updates is significant or meaningful of how much an NLE is used. I think it's quite the opposite. Once it doesn't need updates anymore, it means it's stable and useful. So as long as you see too many updates, I don't trust an NLE.
Right. Well, like you said, when you add a lot of them, there's a lot of bugs to be fixed. But So if 10.5, I don't have any inside information, but I'm pretty sure it's going to come out in 2019. The places that coming from the outside, the places that we could see a sneak peek of it, they could show it at WWDC, just a sneak peek, perhaps. Who knows? But the Mac Pro may be a sneak peek at WWDC. That would be fantastic, because I watch WWDC for Final Cut Pro stuff. Any little hints that they have?
I think it would be reasonable that they present something at WWDC. It's expected. You never know, because you never try to predict anything that Apple does.
Right.
You'll always be wrong.
Yes.
That you remember the Tuesday updates. Every update was on the Tuesday.
Right.
Well, until people started realizing that it was always on the Tuesday, then they changed it.
Yep.
Because they don't want people to anticipate, which is good.
Right.
Which is good. So I would expect a reveal of the new Mac Pro at WWDC. I don't know.
Right.
I hope so.
I do too.
And I think so, honestly.
And what better software to show off the new Mac Pro than Final Cut Pro? Whatever version it is. I mean, they could. Well, they typically have something at the Future Media Concepts Final Cut Pro Creative Summit in the fall. So far, the last 3 years, they've had feature updates to Final Cut that tie in with that event, which makes sense because we go to see the presentation at the Apple campus, and they don't want to just show us the same thing that's been out for 9 months. That wouldn't make any sense. So I'm thinking if they don't have 10.5 out before then, they would probably have it out right around the Creative Summit. No guarantees, of course, like you said. But that makes sense to me because we do go to the Apple campus typically for there. Yeah, well, maybe some private presentation. I don't know, Richard. Right. Right.
I know if they take their time, it means they're doing something really big. And if they would be working on what many people say on the forums, that would be collaboration. There is a way to work in Final Cut Pro 10 to have one of the best collaboration workflows that you can imagine, which would put any other collaboration workflow to shame.
Right, which is what Apple would do. Yeah.
Which was typical what Apple would do if they would be thinking about this. Now, if they would be thinking about this would require a significant rewrite of some of the code.
Yes, that's exactly what I would expect.
Yeah. So if they would be thinking about this and they would implement it the way that I think they should implement it, it would be 10.1 all over again.
You mean going from the separate event and projects to a library setup?
No. I'm not going. No, not in detail, but it would be the same significant update as 10.1 was.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. I didn't mean specifics. What I meant was they changed the way the library worked with events and projects, something along those lines. So that would be interesting. But obviously, so I track these things. Typically, there's 18 months plus or minus between major number updates to Final Cut Pro. If they wait till the Creative Summit, it'll be 2 years between a major number update, which would mean it's more than just a regular number update to me. Something bigger is happening if they wait that long.
I hope something bigger is happening, and I hope they take their time.
Yeah, absolutely.
People on the forums or on the internet, because they don't know anything, and just work on really getting things sorted out. There are a couple of important features that have been requested by most of the people for quite some time,
right?
Which I think they would consider implementing, and just like to start with the craziest thing like dupe detection, which would be useful for some people I really know very well.
Especially Australians.
Yeah, our Australian friends, they like dupe detection. Okay, I think that's a no-brainer. But also what I would like to see is perhaps being able to uncollapse compound clips in the timeline.
Yes. Yes.
That would be a major workflow enhancement.
Yes.
And for many people, as many TV series, really, if they want to target the high-end market, a lot is shot in multicam right now, even feature films. So being able to finalize a multicam,
Yes.
using the old word but finalizing it.
Yes.
And I know there are some people within, different people who think, well, it's never final, so why should we need to finalize it? So give people the option, give them the choice. It's their problem if it isn't final yet. But at least it would have some really important use cases.
Yes.
Especially when working with VFX. That you can, or even if someone for events or concerts who want to stabilize a certain clip in a multicam timeline, you can do it with third parties, but it would be so much easier if you could just, finalize.
Yeah, right. And I'd like to see some more audio refinements in Final Cut. I like audio a lot, so I'm so used to working on Logic because I'm, things that more complex things I do in Logic. And I wish there's some things in Final Cut I'd like to see refined as far as audio goes. They have their own list. They are aware of our list, especially if you send in requests. If you send in requests via the Apple Final Cut Pro app or send them an email, they get those. They read them.
I can assure you that they read them.
And people think, well, they didn't respond to my request. Just because they read your request doesn't mean they're going to fill your request. Those are two different things, right?
No, they don't send thank you notes for asking the same request for the 100th time. No, they don't do that.
Right, exactly.
But I can guarantee you that they get in a list. I don't know how they do it, but I've heard that every feature request gets looked at and gets its order in the range of things that they need to do.
Right. In other words, if something gets 100 requests and something gets 1 request, obviously they're going to spend time looking at the 100 requests if it's the same thing. So.
And not necessarily, it also has to fit in their long-term vision
right.
of Final Cut 10. There are plans, and it's not like you can say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to add dupe detection.
Right.
It's a rework, and it may affect other things. And as an example, and this has nothing to do with Apple, I heard from another NLE manufacturer that months ago, or not, nearly a year ago, they got a request from a major broadcaster using their application. And, okay, they said, okay, let's do it for them. So they made the change only for that client, and it screwed up practically their whole workflow. So you must be very careful not to listen to singular people and really know exactly what you do when you make a modification. It's not like adding a stone on a wall, because every stone you put on the wall affects the other stones.
Yes.
Your wall might fall in.
Absolutely. That's the other thing is we don't want any instability introduced because of a feature request, for sure.
No, absolutely not. And that's why I'm not so very high on feature requests, but on the overall experience and stability of an application. Features can be added. There are third-party people who do fantastic jobs. Final Cut Pro 10 has the largest third-party ecosystem of any of the NLEs.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing. And it has proven to be that it works perfectly together with classic workflows, but also with the most modern workflows. And I'm absolutely convinced, and I'm going to repeat that we are only scratching the surface right now. Because Final Cut Pro 10 has been written on Mac hardware and on the Mac OS. The more this hardware and this operating system evolve, the stronger Final Cut will get. And that's unique. That's a unique position that Apple has.
So we got a comment on the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, you had a comment. You say you had a comment.
I'm sorry. We got a comment. Eugene Lawrence says, what do you think about Hedge acquiring PostLab?
Well, I know Paul from Hedge very well. I also know Jasper. I think they're a great fit. They're a perfect fit together. Actually, both of them were on the boat last year. At IBC, we always take our customers and friends and the whole Final Cut team on a boat.
Yep.
Well, actually 2 boats last year, maybe 3 boats this year. I don't know. And I talked with both of them. I respect Paul from Hedge for what he's doing. It's really great application. It's used a lot with a lot of friends I know. And I think, PostLab is a good addition to that.
Yes, I've had Jasper on Final Cut Pro Radio, and actually Paul's going to be on Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live next week.
Oh, good.
From Hedge.
Regards.
Because I have some questions. I have some questions myself. So as a user, I have Hedge. I have some questions myself. So he's going to be on next week. So that'll be very interesting. So
they make a good team.
That's good. So when you're seeing the kind of deployment of Final Cut Pro 10 in Europe, some of these, I guess, big TV stations have it.
Yeah. Well, there's Polish television, Norwegian television, BBC, French television, TF1, and some others, but also some really big post houses start to use Final Cut 10. And actually, I learned that a really big finishing house for film, Media Lab in Spain, they say that 80% of the work they do, or the finishing they do, comes from Final Cut Pro 10 projects.
Wow.
I just learned this today. So, yes, it's going really well. And it's amazing what as I said, my friends from Metronome, they still use it, and it has expanded exponentially in the past year. They use it on their events now. BBC started using it on news, and now it's on factual. It's expanding.
Right.
I think it's because when people start working with it, there may be some skepticism in the beginning or some fear, because you have to learn something new. It's not that new, but you have to learn something new. But when you start seeing the advantages of working with Final Cut 10, then you keep working on it and you tell it to other people, and that's how the expansion goes. It's mouth to mouth, and I think that's a very good way. And that's maybe also why it is, I think it is more, or it has become popular. Works for me good. And that's also why I think more people started using Final Cut 10 earlier in Europe than in the United States.
So speaking of that, so Metronome's a big company, right? Are there any TV stations of that size in the U.S. using Final Cut Pro 10, do you know?
I'm not so familiar with the U.S. as to Final Cut 10 use. I know at NAB I've met quite some people from Final Cut 10, but broadcast stations often only use one system, one tool. It depends. Like Swiss Television uses Final Cut 10 in post-production, 800 hours per year, but they use Avid for news.
Okay.
Because that's low profile things, and they have many stations, and they work on that ISIS, and that works. So the same BBC, there are divisions that use Premiere, that use Avid, and that use Final Cut 10. Final Cut 10 has a big presence at BBC for the moment, a really big one. And it's expanding all the time. So I don't know about the United States, but in Europe there are quite some big stations. And we also have like the online stations, like our client VGTV in Norway. They have, I think, 2 or 3 regular linear channels and 4 online channels.
Okay.
And they have 70 people working on Final Cut 10, exclusively Final Cut 10. That's a broadcast station that exclusively uses Final Cut 10.
Right.
So yeah, but it's growing, it's expanding, and every day, even last year on the boat at IBC, I met people from Energy, which is a big French company. I didn't even know they were using Final Cut 10 until he told me. And that's good to discover. It's very good to discover that that people actually want to use it and that it's expanding the whole time. In the higher end, middle end, everyone uses it right now. You know, like smaller shops, niche shops. That's normal that you have at least a few copies of Final Cut Pro 10 laying around and that a few people are working on it. I was at BBDO agency in Brussels. They use Final Cut 10 exclusively together with After Effects. So yeah, it's pretty much an established NLE all over Europe.
Right. I mean, people talk about it in the U.S. versus Europe. Of course, Apple never broke their numbers down. Their 2.5 million numbers where that happens. I would presume the majority is in the United States, just because we have I just presume that. But
yes.
Yeah, these bigger places in Europe that very effectively use Final Cut Pro 10 over in Europe, and I know there's people in the United States, post houses and some TV stations, there's films been made on it. So the idea that it can't happen, we know it has. There's no sense in arguing that point. We has. Gert says YouTube users use Final Cut Pro 10 a lot. Absolutely. I mean, which one of the TV stations wouldn't like to have iJustine's numbers for views? Millions, 1.5 million views she gets of her videos sometimes.
We don't actually, people in Europe don't know who iJustine is.
Right. Well, I didn't until last year at the summit.
But many producers, film producers, would kill to have that kind amount of people. But it's also very relative, Richard, because the followers that you have on YouTube are not necessarily the people who watch your videos. I saw the comments under these guys.
Right.
I love your hair. Okay, good. Please like me. Okay, I like you.
No, I understand. But
they're really doing fantastic and high quality work on Final Cut Pro 10. I think it's great for that purpose, and it will always remain one of the best tools you can find for fast turnaround, high quality, high performance, high stability projects. It's an evolution that we can't stop anymore.
Well, that's the other thing is the idea is going forward. I would say there's going to be more adoptions of Final Cut Pro 10, not less. In places that they don't exist now, TV stations and film production in Hollywood, I think there's going to be more Final Cut Pro adoption. It's not going to go down; it's going to go up from here on out.
There's not any doubt about that, and only for the fact that I don't think you will see people really jump ship, as they always say it, or switch over to Final Cut 10 entirely. No, but many people are having Final Cut Pro 10 seats within other workflows now. And that's what I call the Trojan horse.
Yes.
Get a few people in the company using it, let them, like they did at Metronome. There were 60 Avid suites, and then there were 3 people on a MacBook Pro working on Final Cut 10, and they were more effective, more cost efficient, more productive, and better than the others. So management sees that. Management can't be blind to things like that. I know, for instance, now I was in Finland, and one of the attendees was Benny J. They're really big. They own Burnham. What's it called? Burnham reality television in the States?
I'm not sure. What is it?
Wait a minute. They do the Kardashians.
Yeah, I know who you mean. My mother watches that station. It's I'll forget. I'll remember.
I've never seen it. It's not.
I haven't either, but I see when I walk in her room, she has them on sometime. The housewives and stuff.
FJ is the global company that owns lots of houses that do. So now, one of the people there asked us if they could use a jellyfish in Thailand in a few weeks for the next season of Temptation Island.
Huh.
And I said, okay, and what are you using at Banijay? He said Final Cut 10. It's a global leader. So, yes, it's happening. I think they use everything. but also Final Cut 10. And that's why I say it's going to further expand. It's going to be added to the tool sets of people who don't use it right now. I don't think it will replace. I think every editor should have the choice to work with what he prefers. But as Oliver also stated in his blog today, you need to be proficient on multiple tools.
Right. Yeah.
And Final Cut really, if you miss out on that, you miss out on a lot. Even if you don't use it primarily, you have to have it.
Well, the other. Speaking of that, so far we've only paid $299 for Final Cut Pro 10. It'll be 8 years in June. No increase for all the updates. We've had 50, 60 updates, not a single penny more, versus the Adobe model, which charges every month for year after year after year after year. And I think Avid even went that way now. Aren't they doing a subscription thing?
Yeah, they got 290,000 subscribers at this moment, which is about 1/10 of the Final Cut 10 users, 10%.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
But, okay, they're entrenched in these markets, and they have their own hardware, and it's good to see that they are evolving as well. I think any of the current big NLEs have their own pros and cons.
Absolutely.
And people who can work with it. And sometimes people, like Oliver, use different NLEs for different projects, which is not a bad thing. And then I think Final Cut will remain the most used NLE in what I call the modern content creation workflows that don't do offline, online anymore, that want to work straight from the native media and spit out programs at incredible speeds, but without giving any compromise to quality. That is very important as well. So yes, I think Final Cut is a perfect fit for today and for the years to come.
So we got a couple of other comments. Gert says he absolutely loves using Final Cut Pro 10 on his YouTube channel, especially working with libraries and the tools around Final Cut Pro 10, which you mentioned earlier, all the different third-party tools like Kino. I love Kino.
Oh, I love Kino. Robert is a friend, and he's a wonderful guy.
He is.
And he really continues to develop Kino, and I love it very much. I first met Robert at the Final Cut Pro 10 tour in Madrid. I think it was 3 years ago. Can't remember it. And then we started talking, and I really appreciate what he's doing.
Yes.
And we work closely together with Robert for Kino.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Kino. And he also says Keyflow Pro and Final Cut Pro Library Manager, Motion, MO2, and Compressor. These are the things that he liked. It's the third party, the way the third party people come in and make, these, especially plugins and title plugins and things.
That's really a strong aspect. And actually it was because of the lack of these things in the earlier versions of Final Cut 10 that this ecosystem has grown. And I've often wondered what is the best if you have an application that has everything, that is bloated with everything that only few people need, or you just pick what you need.
Right.
You get this really basic, good working NLE, and you want more, okay, get it.
Yep.
Because not everyone wants it.
Right. So another comment.
Yeah.
Another comment on YouTube. Edward Bruce Radcliffe. I am actively doing my best to ditch all Adobe, which I did years ago. Just After Effects is left, which I use. I wish Motion was a bit more capable. So Final Cut Pro has been updated so many times, some of these big updates over the years. Motion has smaller updates, it seems like.
It does. I think it's a deliberate choice. At this time, I think Motion is a perfect companion to Final Cut 10. And I can give an example. At Swiss Television, they use it to have, their house style titles and lower thirds for different programs. They centralize this on a library, on a Jellyfish. Well, no, actually on a rack they have there. And and every editor can access it and can modify the titles if they want.
Right.
It's a really, really huge integration between Motion and Final Cut. I don't know why people want Send to Motion again. I don't see where it would be useful. It may come again. I can't say anything. You know, with West Plate,
Right.
the Apple on the Apple,
Right.
you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
He's brilliant. And but also, for instance, for audio, there's Michael Garber. You know, they have brilliant people coming right out of the field and who know exactly what they would have wanted. People, you know, they produce things that only a fraction of the average user needs.
Right.
So why would Apple need to include this? I don't think it's a good thing to have, you know, an NLE that has everything inside. I don't think that's a good thing.
No, I don't either.
I prefer a lean, fast NLE as a building block, and then you just add the things that you need, and other people who don't need those things won't add them. And that's good. That's really good.
So one of the other third-party apps or developers we forgot to talk about is Frame.io. They're doing a great job. All over the place, they're doing a job. You know, I really enjoyed their booth on the actual NAB Convention Center floor. I stayed there quite a bit.
We shared the booth in my and it was a great experience working with our team. And I think I don't know yet, but if they have the same booth at the IBC, we will probably share it again. They're a good team to work with. They are multi-platform. They have found a missing link in remote collaboration.
Exactly.
Not collaboration we talk about, but you know, editor, director collaboration, team collaboration on a project. It's perfect, and it only can get better. It's already very good. And that's what I love about, you know, Final Cut. It's the ecosystem that is being evolved around it. And that's I think, one of the biggest strengths. Because people always say, oh, it doesn't do that, it doesn't do that. It doesn't have to do that. Because only few people want certain things. So add the things that you need. I think that's one of the strengths of Final Cut 10.
No, it absolutely is. I often say I'd rather pay Mark Spencer $30 to develop a title, because it would take me much longer and it wouldn't be as good, and I'd rather just keep on editing. So,
of course, and it gives work to other people, you know, and you know, training as well. You know, Ripple training is fantastic.
Yep,
they do a great job, and they're always on the cutting edge of teaching new things, new workflows. And I think that the ecosystem and the community around Final Cut 10 is what makes this application so great. And of course, it's a great NLE.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's every time. The few times that I've tried Resolve Edit a few times, and I'm really curious about this iPad app though, Luma Fusion.
It's really good.
It's an exceptionally good iPad app. Now, I'm not going to give away any secrets, but if you watch my interview with them, I interviewed them at NAB, they hinted at a Mac version. Of
course. Why not?
So that would be interesting because I like the iPad version so much. The interesting thing is it has tracks, but it has connected clips as well. Mm-hmm. It has both connected clips and tracks. So yes. It's like a combination of magnetic timeline and just a traditional track-based.
I think it's very good. And the more people use the technologies that Apple has introduced, the better for Apple.
Absolutely. So one thing I want to do is congratulate the Final Cut Pro team. Those guys and gals are just doing a fantastic job. And even if they don't respond to every email that they get, and they don't have updates as often as perhaps some people would like them to have, just wait for 10.5. That's what all I got to say. I don't know anything about it. I'm on the outside. I like it out here. If I was on the inside, I couldn't be talking about it right now.
Of course. Yeah, I think they're doing a great job. And they are, when you meet them, they are very accessible and they listen. And that's all. And I think it's very dangerous to speculate with anything that Apple does. You're always wrong. So I think we should wait now. Give them the time to develop this major update. There may be some smaller updates in between.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But I hope that they're working on the things that have been discussed lots of times. And if they do and they make it the Final Cut 10 way, so better than all the rest, then I think we will have another major surge of Final Cut Pro 10 users next year.
Yep. And Chasing Photography Films on YouTube says, besides KinoFrame.io, he likes SpeedScriber, Motion VFX, and they're all stables of his work, especially he does documentary work, apparently.
Yeah, okay, well, good. Well, I have to say that Simon from Motion VFX does a terrific job.
He does. His quality work.
It's really high quality work, and it's very courageous to just support. Now he does some After Effects templates as well, but it's primarily Motion.
Yep. And
Final Cut 10, and he has developed the like MO2, a tremendous 3D system.
Everybody likes that. Everybody likes that.
I like it a lot, and it will only get better once we get even more superior hardware, because it works on that. Like Final Cut Pro 10, the more Apple computers will evolve, and the more the OS will become, and the more AV Foundation will evolve, the faster and the better it will get.
Yep.
So I think we're only at the beginning. It's 8 years, and we're only at .5.
Yeah, exactly. Not even .5 yet. That's maybe this year. So it might be too early, but are you going to come to the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, do you think, or you don't know yet?
I've never been there. So it will be the first time. I haven't had invitations. I don't know. It depends on the work.
Okay. Depends on what's going on, yeah.
To put two more forwards first, we are growing extremely fast. Takes a lot of, time and effort to keep everything up. I think my major thing will be IBC.
Okay.
With Sam and the team, and then we will see if I will go to the summit or not. I would love to, but for me, it's not imperative.
Right. Right. You have other things to work on. IBC and NEB. You've been the last two. And
especially since now it is in the last quarter of the year. And for Europe, that's the most important quarter for purchases of ships.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Decisions are made right after IBC, and then you get the sales coming in. So it's a really busy times last quarter of the year for us.
Absolutely. So Gert says, hope to meet you, Ronny Courtens, at IBC. Thanks for the great talk. He had to leave, but he wanted to say that.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I have this. Yeah, he's from Holland. Yeah. He has a Final Cut user group.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, Het Kracht. Yeah. He has
Okay.
So I'll see him at IBC. Oh, I know lots of people now. It's the community is growing extremely fast. It was already a big community, but you discover new people every day, and that's good about this system.
It absolutely is. So here's hoping for a Mac Pro, at least a preview at WWDC, because if it doesn't have something to do with Final Cut Pro or the Mac Pro, I'm not as interested. I mean, the iPhones and stuff are fine, but I always like that surprise when they have something more pro appsy.
Yeah. Of course, that's what we like to talk about.
Exactly.
But everything is tied together, Richard. And if there's a new Mac Pro, that will be an improvement for Final Cut 10 as well.
Oh, yeah.
You see, because now, although I honestly think that many people are very happy with what the iMac or iMac Pros now have to offer, or the MacBook Pros. The latest MacBook Pros are extremely fast.
Yep.
So the Mac Pro will be a more selected group of users, but it will certainly benefit Final Cut 10 because it works on the hardware. The OS, the hardware, and the NLE are one. And that is perhaps the biggest feature of Final Cut 10.
And that's a big one.
The faster the computers get, the better the NLE gets, automatically. And because it's very tight into the OS and into the hardware. And I think that's their major strength as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been for a long time. When anything that Apple develops as an application, you have a lot of integration with the OS and the application and the hardware. Like you said, that's a strong, very, very strong point.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I must say that, I really admire what the others do as well. And I'm actually secretly expecting a revamp of Premiere in the next, I don't know, in the future, which would change the whole thing again.
Right.
Because now everybody's looking at Resolve, and Premiere had some drawbacks, but they're not stupid. They're working. Everybody's working on it.
Of course.
Everybody's working on things. And what is a fact right now can be totally different in 6 months or a year.
No,
except one.
Yep.
That Final Cut 10 will remain in its market. And I think it's only at the other end of the market that you have these competing NLEs.
Yeah, I like competition. I like, competition for Final Cut Pro. Absolutely. I remember
Absolutely.
I was at the Super Meet last year, not this year, last year, and I was watching when they were showing Resolve and they were showing the audio what was that audio program, Fairlight, and showing some other things like the clipboard history.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching somebody from the Final Cut Pro team was right beside me, just looking, just watching. I was in the back, yep.
Apple won't mind if Resolve breaks through. There's a lot of technology, Apple technology inside Resolve, so they won't mind at all.
Right.
I think Apple is the clever company.
Yep.
You don't have to have your own things on every side of the market, as long as you get paid for licenses.
Right, of course. Speaking of that, what do you think is going on with ProRes RAW? I was expecting more cameras to come out supporting it at NAB this year, but that didn't happen. I mean, they're on the software end of things, it seemed to have expanded, but I would like it for more cameras, especially for me, from my point. I like small cameras. I'd like to see more in-camera processing or recording of ProRes RAW. The DJI is the only one that does it so far, in-camera.
Mm-hmm. There will probably be others. You've seen that some of the major real-time grading solutions and DIT solutions support ProRes RAW, which is a big thing.
Yes.
A really big for the high-end market.
Yep.
On the lower end, the mid-end market, it depends on the camera manufacturers if they will adopt it or not. I would advise everyone to do it because it's a very flexible codec. It doesn't weigh heavy on your timeline, and it is in many ways superior to B-roll because it's more a real RAW codec. This is a really weird discussion you can have because when you talk to the really high-end post stations, they even don't consider red RAW as RAW.
Because it's still compressed a little bit.
It's still in a way compressed. It's bared.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really strange discussion you can have. But anyway, I think ProRes RAW has a great future. And it only takes time for this. It's been introduced last year.
Right, 1 year.
So 1 year, that is nothing.
No, it is. You're right.
And a lot of things have evolved in that 1 year. And I see a great future for it. And I see, I can easily see real big cameras adopting ProRes RAW as well. Really? I know. My bag of yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, no problem, no problem. No, no, not really. I think as I said, we'll have to wait until IBC before about a couple of weeks before we decide what we're going to do at IBC. Um, it depends on the market as well, but I hope and I think that IBC will be kind of special for anyone who uses Final Cut or Apple systems. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But it would be a good opportunity, and if not, then it's later. But it would be a good opportunity to show things. It all depends. I only hope that whatever they do it really well, because I think people are now anticipating a major release or a major update, let's call it that. And so, yeah, they'll have to do it really, really, really well. And I prefer that they take a lot of time to do it.
Absolutely. 10.5. At 10.5 in 2019. We know that's happening. Most likely. But I have no idea what they're going to do with 10.5. What's, if it's the big update, what it's going to be. They always have surprises for us. Sometimes we might know a few things, but, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? I only hope it will benefit as many users as possible.
Absolutely. And the numbers are going to grow. I do expect 3 million to 3.5 million at some point announcement. They announced 2.5 a year ago and 2 million the year before that. So in 1 year it was 500,000. That's a lot of users. I mean, Avid would kill for those numbers, wouldn't they?
Well, I don't know, because Avid is tied, it's very expensive, tied to their expensive hardware as well. Right. It's entrenched in certain workflows. I had a discussion recently with a major OTT provider, and they only want the companies who produce for them, they only want them to work with Avid. I said, what is wrong with you? And actually, no, we're trying to convince these people because he said, it doesn't work with the big finishing houses. So I gave him a few examples, and then he listened and he said, oh, well, I may have to reconsider this. First thing he said was, and you hear that every year by different people. I heard it a couple of weeks ago. Someone comes up and said, did you hear that they have eliminated the Final Cut 10 team? I said, what?
You're right. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I said, listen, I am not even going to respond to that. I don't do
exactly.
That
I'm the same way. You guys can play in the sandbox by yourselves.
It's too ridiculous that I really don't want to get into these conversations anymore. If there are still people who in 2019 think that Final Cut 10 is used by no one and it's not professional, then let them be happy
right.
with it. I don't argue with that anymore. It's so ridiculous that you don't even want to respond to that anymore.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. I have better things to do with my time.
So do I.
All right, Ronny.
Okay.
I sure appreciate you coming on, and we will talk again, if not before IBC or the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit.
We'll know more about IBC, I think, let's wait until after WWDC.
Exactly. Let's really hope for at least a Mac Pro, because I'm holding off. I have a 2017 iMac, which is I'm working on right here, and I'm looking for a new Mac. It's not going to be the 2019 iMac for one reason. It only has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Mac Mini has 4. The iMac Pro has 4. I'm presuming the Mac Pro is going to have 4, but the iMac only has 2, and I need at least 3 because I have a Thunderbolt audio device that has to connect directly via Thunderbolt 3. There's no way I can't daisy chain it, so then I only have 1 left. So I need at least 3, so I'm going to wait and see what the Mac Pro does. I'm either going to get that or I'm going to get an iMac Pro.
Okay. Well, I think you'll be happy.
Oh, I'm
with
sure.
The new Mac Pro.
I'm sure. All right, Ronnie.
Richard, great talking with you as always.
Great talking with you, Ronnie.
Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.